We are going to continue our study of Social Studies Chapter 9, The Greek World Today, with Lesson 2, Sparta and Athens. The big idea for today: the two most powerful city-states in Greece, Sparta and Athens, had very different cultures and became bitter enemies in the 400s BCE. There are three main ideas. The Spartans built a military society to provide security and protection. The Athenians admired the mind and the arts in addition to physical abilities. Sparta and Athens fought over who should have power and influence in Greece. They were so very different. You're going to come back and watch this video. So let's talk about Sparta first. Daily life in Sparta was dominated by the army. The boys were trained from an early age to be soldiers. Spartan men reached full citizenship at age 30. At age 30, they could then move back home, but they stayed in the army until they turned 60. Courage, strength, self-discipline, and obedience were the most important qualities to have in Sparta. Because men were often at war, ladies, you actually had more rights than other Greek women in other city-states. But your men were gone all the time fighting. So, ladies, you ran the household and you owned the property in case your husband died. Ladies, you also received physical training, and sometimes you even would compete with the men in sporting events. So this is a rough, gruff society. So they were very disciplined. They valued obedience and courage above all else. So this early age that I talked about, at age 7, boys left home and got a very basic education, but they started their training to be a Spartan soldier. So think about that, age 7, taken away from their mother, basically, learning to be a killer. From 7 to 12, they got values training. From 12 to 18, physical training through exercise. From 18 to 20, that was your military training. So boys, you learn how to fight as part of the army, which really begins way back here too. Ages 20 to 30, that's your formal military service. So you're now a soldier and you are part of the body of the Spartan army. And then at age 30, you finally would gain full citizenship and you could participate in the assembly and you got to move back home, like with your wife. Please come back and watch the videos. It'll make this make a lot more sense to you if you do. If you don't, you're kind of going to be a little lost. And there's some really funny videos in this lesson. Now this one, I'm going to caution you, is pretty graphic. The Spartan way of life was very harsh, very tough. So keep that in mind as you're watching this video. It's pretty brutal. The government in Sparta was officially ruled by 2 kings who jointly led the army, but they elected officials, and those elected officials actually had more power than the kings had. Remember, a democracy. The officials handled dealings between Sparta and the other city-states, which wasn't an easy task because they were so different. Sparta's government was set up so it could control the city's helots, which is the word that they used for slaves. They had way more slaves than they had citizens. All right, So, from the rough Spartans to the Athenians, they admired the mind and the arts, but they also had physical ability. So, boys and men in Athens, Sparta is your main rival. Though the Athenians worked to improve their bodies just like the Spartans, they only had to devote 2 years to the army. They got a well-rounded education in Athens. They learned to read, write, count, and sing. And if you were a wealthy boy, you continued your education with a private tutor. Boys that came from poorer families usually became farmers. Ladies, if you were an Athenian, you received almost no education unless you were from a wealthy family. Because basically in Athens, men did not think that women needed to be educated, because their role in the family was to stay at home and cook and clean and take care of the babies. Athenian women had fewer rights than women in many of the other city-states. In fact, they had hardly any at all. So this is just a silly little video that's kind of mocking uh, the Spartan army is kind of mocking the Athenian army. So come back and watch it, and then come back and watch this video as well. As I said, there are a lot of little short videos in this lesson, but you need to come back and watch them so this lesson will make more sense to you. So as we stated earlier, daily life in Athens was a whole lot different than daily life in Sparta, because they valued education and the arts. They believed that educated people made better citizens. So, remember the Iliad and the Odyssey? Some of the boys were required to memorize long passages from that. All right, so Sparta and Athens. Due to their really big differences, they were constantly fighting over who should have power and influence in Greece. However, if they had an outside enemy like Persia, they would often work together to win, which is what they did in the Persian Wars. So even as different as they were, they would come together to defeat someone outside of their kind, so to speak. After the Persian Wars, the city-states joined an alliance, and historians call this the Delian League. An alliance simply means that they agreed to work together. Well, Sparta formed its own alliance, called the Peloponnesian League. That didn't go over very well. So, this led to the Peloponnesian War. Sparta declared war on Athens. That started the Peloponnesian War. This war lasted for 10 years before they decided to call a truce. Okay, so basically a tie. Now think about that for a second. As gruff as the Spartans were, they didn't defeat Athens. But the war started up once more when Athens tried to expand its empire. So they went and invaded Sparta. Well, this time the Spartans won. So with the defeat of Athens, Sparta then became the most powerful city-state in Greece. Other city-states started to resent Sparta. Gee, can't imagine why. I mean, think about your normal life and then having to live by Sparta's ways. So this led to a period of war. And then after that, basically control of Greece shifted from one city-state to another for years. It was this constant battle over who was going to have power. And I bet you can decide how this is going to end for them. You know, united we stand, divided we fall. Anyway, this is the end of lesson 9.2. Please go back and watch those videos. I can't stress it enough. And this graphic goes with this lesson, and this will be the end of 9.2. So all of this in lavender purple. This would be Athens and their allies, so their friends. All of this in gold would be Sparta and their allies. And all of this in green those are basically the neutral states. They didn't want to get involved in the war between Athens and Sparta. They wanted to stay neutral. But you can also see that both Sparta and Athens, had these little colonies over here as well. So all of these little red bomb sites, these are battle sites between the two. So it was something. And this was from 431 to 404 BCE. Next time, we are going to talk about Alexander the Great in lesson 9.3.